Okay, we're COMP308 and it's week 3, lesson 3, part 2. And we were just talking about wireframing. We also built our logo and a sitemap in part 1. And now we're going to continue to do part 2. But before I move into additional content down here, I think it's cool to have the additional content in there. But what I like to do at this stage, once I've got my nav scheme and my logo in place, I'd like to kind of pull another browser window over, right? Now there's a couple ways to do this. If I'm targeting iOS devices, I could simply pull an iPhone across or an iPad. And I think what I'd like to do is for me to make it responsive, I'm going to kind of pull together an iPhone. Right now, my iPhone, my size, I can choose my size if I want to make it a certain size, because this is what's going to show my screen. Right? I can also go with an iPhone 5. Unfortunately, my version doesn't have an iPhone 6, but I'm sure I can probably download something that's an iPhone 6. Here's my iPhone 4, my iPhone 5. And I can get the specifications for this kind of thing, right? But I know a couple things, right? I know probably to be safe without actually pulling in an iPhone, right? So maybe my design is not just for iPhones, right, at all. Maybe what I want to do instead of doing this, and this is what I recommend to you as well, is when I go back to containers, I want to put a browser window in here again, right? But this time my browser window is not going to be 1024 by 768, but rather 320 by 480 or 320 by 480. Why? Because then this handles most screens. Most small screens are like this, right? 320 by 480, right? So this, this part right here would be instead of my web page, right? This will be the same thing, my portfolio site. Come on, Tom, spell. And it's the same thing. Because remember, we're designing for both screens, right? So how will it look like on the small screen? That's the question that you should ask yourself, right? So here's my small screen, right? 320 by 480. And you know what? Guess what? If I take my logo and I copy it and I paste it over here, right? Here's my logo. It's too big, eh? Right? I can't use my logo. I shouldn't use my logo this big, right, on my small screen. It doesn't make any sense. So when I do my planning, I'm just going to kind of put this together so you can see what I'm talking about here. When I do my planning for my small screen, I need to do it now, right? I know that this logo is too big, so I need to make it smaller, right? And I have to make it at least, let's say, half as big, right? So I need to go at least 75 by 75. Right? Now the great thing about this program is it actually does it for me, right? I don't want my logo, though, 75 to 75 to be scrunched up, right? I want to replace my logo when I go small screen. So I want to say one logo for my desktop, and when I go small screen, my logo swaps out my image, so it's 75 by 75, so I retain my resolution, so it doesn't skew or it doesn't lose clarity, right? So in order for me to do that, of course, I got to go back to my design. And I'm going to go back in here in my large logo. This is Tom 300, right? 300, Spartan. And resize this thing. Sorry for that break of sanity. Go back to 75 by 75. So this is what my logo would look like on the small screen at 100%, right? And because I think it's got to be a little smaller, right? And modify canvas, trim canvas, and I'll save this thing as Tom 75.
Sorry, Tom,
Yeah,
would it be responsive website like automatically do that for you?
it would. But the problem with resizing my images, like I said, is sometimes the image. So first of all, a couple things I want to do. I want to swap out my image, and you can do that with Foundation automatically. When I get to that break, the break where I go from large to small, I want to swap out my image there. Why? It's a smaller image. So for my device, it's going to load faster, right? Number one, it's going to be less. I remember I talked about almost like byte saving. It's going to be a byte saving practice what I'm talking about here, and it's not going to lose resolution because sometimes even with the best responsive frameworks, when it resizes the thing for you, it doesn't look right. Don't let the software resize for you. Resize outside of the software, and then replace the image with your media queries or with your foundation, or whatever kind of framework you're using. That's the better thing to do.
So are you gonna like mark us based on doing bite-sized stuff?
No, I'm just telling you what I would do.
Kind of showing us.
I would do. This is what I would do. I'm not going to mark you on it. This is what I would do, because remember, this is not a design class,
Yeah.
right? This class that we're doing is it's based on, hey, I've got this stuff. I want to put together my portfolio. It's got to work for both on mobile size, let's say, as well as desktop. My desktop should reflow. If you notice, I didn't take all the space up from my desktop from a medium size, like a tablet size thing. So I got to keep that in mind as well. I could do a third design, right? Which, not that I couldn't do it, I could totally do it. A third design, third wireframe for tablets, which is not a bad idea, right? I'm not going to do it today, only from a time perspective. But if you see, I spent about an hour now kind of planning, right, for you guys. And this is probably in the range of where I'd get you to do, right? About an hour, 2 hours, just from a planning perspective. And then that part's done. And then you can actually build your external document. Yeah.
Does your site have to be compatible with mobiles as well?
That's the responsive thing that I'm asking you
That's
to
the
do.
responsive.
If your site's not responsive, then you need to go back to the drawing board. Yeah, you need to go back. Well, it's inside your requirements. Yeah, you have to read your requirements. I always tell people like this. You know, there's an old programmer's adage, which I learned when I was a kid, which is RTFM. Who knows what RTFM is? It's actually really old, right? It's read the fine manual, right? But you can replace F by something else, right? And you know what it means, right? Read the manual, right? And but read the fine manual is what we used to say for us and back in the day. And so I'd say the same thing. If you missed a requirement, read the fine manual, and you'll see that there's a requirement there. Yes.
Sorry, this might be the requirements as well. For the wireframe, do we have to do the design for each page, like contact page, or is it?
If you look and see what it says in the requirements, so let's go take a look at the wireframe section, right? And this is in your external document. It says a wireframe section that includes a wireframe image and appropriate arrows and labels for each template of your site. So that means you have your, at least if you're gonna run on mobile, that's one template, and then your other site template would be the bare minimum would be your desktop.
No, but I mean, like, is it for like you have like the about me page?
If the about me page looks a little different, you have to kind of sketch that out too. But once you've got your main site going, then and just the sizes, you can do it quickly. You can replicate that. But yes, you would. So we'd have to spend another hour here doing. We don't have an hour to spend together, but you'd spend another hour putting together all your wireframes, because what you want to do is you want to kind of design your pages before they're designed, right? Before you actually physically, belch them out on the web, so to speak, right? You have to kind of, you should kind of take a look and see what they're going to look like. It shouldn't be random. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't let your framework do it for you. You should kind of say, okay, well, this is what I want. Now, what can I do with my framework to make it look like or close to what I want to get it to, right? Or with media queries. If you're not a framework person, you want to do it by hand, then you want to use CSS media queries to do that, right? Are you going to be good?
Yeah.
You get another week, right? Okay, so this is the wireframe section piece. Let's go back. So we need to make some other wireframes. I'm going to make one more, like I said. So I got this, but I need to put these links on here, right? So I'm going to kind of, again, there's a couple ways to do this, like copy and paste, right? And then I can just simply drag and drop. But if I notice automatically, I'm like, oh, it's big, right? Now here's a question. On this my mobile side, do I really need GitHub? And the answer is no, right? Because what the hell is GitHub going to do for me on mobile? Nothing. I can't see it properly. It's too small. And GitHub's not responsive, or it doesn't have its own little thing. So that GitHub link's got to go, right? So definitely a contact me page and stuff like that will be there. But I can't have too many buttons on here, right? So I don't need the home link because I am home, right? So I'm going to leave that out on my mobile, again, I'm trying to kind of scrunch up my design as much as possible. I'm going to swap out my nav bar. So for example, when I'm at home, I'm not going to show my home link. I'm going to show my main link, my services, my contact me page. I got to add in, just in the order I want. My about me page should be thing. Maybe I'll call it about, and contacts. So a little bit different. It'll look on my mobile side. And I definitely need projects, right? Because projects are going to be something there. Let's take a look at this for a second to see what it looks like, right? And I'm going to make this kind of large and, you know, kind of span it so it looks right for my page. This is what it's going to look like, my bar, right? And let's move my logo up just a little bit so it's top of my page here. And this is what my site's going to look like. So my site, from a mobile perspective, can look like this, right? I mean, I can be creative and I can make it so that these service links stuff come on the side, right? Remember, I want to optimize my spacing here. So I can make my mobile site look whatever I like, right? Whatever I want. I can also center this thing so there's only like this many links, right? But this is the idea here. I'm trying to design my link. Okay, next piece. And then I'll stop in a second. So I got my, on my main page, I'm just designing my main page here. I've got my nav bar, my welcome statement. So, you know, welcome to Tom's website would be the statement, right? Something like that. Right, so let's say I'm going to kind of pull together some common elements, all my elements here. And by the way, if you notice, there's all kinds of, there's breadcrumbs right here if I want to add them in. Let's add that in now since I have that, since I saw that. Here's my breadcrumbs, right? And my breadcrumbs is going to appear underneath my main page, but it's not going to appear on my mobile. Doesn't make sense for me. It does, because I don't have space. I got to conserve my space. So I'm going to go home, about me, projects, services. These are all the things that I'm going to do, right? Contact me and GitHub, right? But this, obviously, I'm not on the GitHub page here, right? This is where I would be if I was going to make my breadcrumbs for my GitHub page. This is great. But right now, my breadcrumbs only should have my home page there, right? Because that's where I'm at. So this is what it would look like if I was going to have breadcrumbs on my home page, right? Something like a breadcrumb that showed where I am. So this section here, I could outline with a box, some kind of container, right? So I can kind of save the container inside an area where I can color it. Oops. I can color it in a different way, right? So here I am. I'm going to kind of pull this container down. And this container is going to go, I'm going to layer it behind in a second. But I want to make it so it stretches out the size of my page, right? And from a layering perspective, I want to say, let me see, it's center back. There we go. And let's change my background. Maybe I'll make it like a light gray. And if I was going to go with gray themes, and so that way I know where my breadcrumbs are going to appear. It's going to kind of appear underneath my links. Maybe I'll move my breadcrumb itself over just a touch so it's in alignment with my buttons if I want to put it there, if I was going to use breadcrumbs. Some people also use breadcrumbs at the bottom of their page or in the middle of their page somewhere. So let's just put it there for a placeholder as I'm designing, right? It's not going to hurt me any. Now there's a thing about grouping, and you can group all these images. So if you notice when I click things around, they kind of click with me and move around. I could certainly do that at this stage, but I'm not going to. So I need some kind of call to action, right? Some kind of text. So I'm going to pull in some, this is a label, there's some text here, a link nav bar. There's some other things I can grab here. Paragraph text I'm going to need in a second. But I'm probably going to pull together this text, some text. So here's my text. And I'm going to say, you know, welcome, welcome to Tom's portfolio site, whatever you want to put there, with some kind of tagline, right? So this is my welcome statement, And I could certainly choose a type of my text that I want to use. My font size, I'm going to make it quite large, maybe like 28, right? So I want to know how it's going to look, if I want to center it or not. Like for example, maybe I want it to be there, you know, from a heading. And again, this is the great thing. If I don't like it, or if it looks ugly, or if I want to add other style to it or whatever, again, I'm just putting my content requirements in here, right? You know, I'm using a circle, and you know, maybe I want to use circles as kind of one of my themes for my site, like a lot of different circles, right? So one of the things I can do is definitely put a container in there, some kind of geometric shape that I want to kind of drag and drop, right? And let's say I want to put my geometric shape in the background, right? I want my shape to be a circle, right, instead of a square. Here it is. And I want to put my circle way in the background, right? So it's almost like encompassing my entire site. And it's got to be kind of even. So maybe I want to make it 600 by 600. Bear with me, I'll show you what I'm doing. So this is where it is. I'm going to center it. Here's my centering. And then maybe I want to put this in the background again. I want to send this to back. And again. Oops, too much. And then, as an example, I want kind of like to design my site so it's kind of with a circle in the background. Because I'm using geometric shape. My site circle is in the top. That's my badge. And I want my circle to kind of appear in the background as well, to kind of highlight everything. It's in the middle. Now this tells me that I'm out of balance here a little bit. Because if you notice how this piece sticks out here on this side more than it does on this side, right? So I could realign. Not going to do that right now because we don't have time for this. For the essence of time, I'm just going to move forward. But this is what I would do from a design perspective, starting to think of where my stuff is going to appear, right? If I'm going to do a circle here, as an example, well, you know what? I might as well do a circle over here to kind of keep it copacetic, right? Kind of the same. So I'm going to kind of put that in there. And I'm just going to do the same kind of idea. I'm going to kind of pull it to the, oops. I'm going to pull it to the top and pull my circle so that it kind of encompasses my mobile. So I can do that with mobile as well. I can make it so that it looks, you know, as realistic or whatever, the same as my primary design as I'd like. Right, so here I'm putting it at the top, centered. I want to go to how big it is and make sure it's the same size. So maybe I'm going to make it like this. This will be the 300 by 300 idea that I like. Even if it gets lost, right, I can still center it so it's in the middle. And now I want to layer it to the back. So I'm going to kind of move it to the back, to the back, to the back. Right, so I can see it. So this is what my site design would look like. It's almost the same, but again, I'm trying to take the same background. So that would be like a background or some kind of, I would probably use CSS for that. And if you notice, it's way more balanced on the mobile side than it is on here on the desktop, like just in terms of all the stuff I have, right? The other idea in my mind is to take this home button and this you know, breadcrumb stuff and put it around this circle in a different way, right? Which I could totally do. So I'm designing the site the way I want to make it. Okay, so I got my Welcome to Tom's Portfolio site. I want to definitely use that element, and I want to take it, I want to copy it and paste it, and I'll take this element and put it here on my mobile. If I notice right away it's way too big, this is where your responsive stuff would come into play, right? But still, what you want to do is kind of conform to a specific size, at least, that makes sense. So right now it's 28, maybe I go to 16, maybe 18, probably fit 18 in there. And then pull this back over, right? So, because this is the same kind of elements that I want on one page, I want to have on the other, right? So as I'm designing one side, I'm also designing the other side, right? I don't have a footer, right? Because I need a footer in there too. So I'm probably going to pull in some kind of a footer container or something like that, like a rectangle, at the bottom of my page because, hey, one of the things I asked you guys to do is do a footer with a copyright statement and all that stuff, right? So I'm kind of put a footer in here. Let's do it here first. So here's my footer. And I'm going to pull this over, right? So kind of get the idea of what it's looking to look like. And so this is my footer for my site. And I definitely want some text in there, right? So I'm going to put my text up here. And my text is going to be copyright, if I can spell, copyright 2015, right? Let's pull this a little bit bigger. And maybe I want to put it in the middle, right? Because I'm a centering kind of guy, right? Copyright 2015, right? Do I want my terms of use policy or my privacy policy here on my website? No, but maybe what I want to link, or maybe I want to put a link on my footer here that takes me back to my full site. So here is full site. So I think from a design perspective, you want to have something down here that takes me back to my full site. If I want to get to this thing, if they really want to see it with mobile, they can. And this is where I'd probably put it, something like that. Right? So full site's going to take me back to this full site, you know, as opposed to seeing it in this crunched up view. Right? Let's keep going. We have another 2 minutes and then I'll stop. And then, but you get the idea here, what I'm trying to do. Here's my mission statement and a call to action button, right? I can put the call to action button in there and a featured work slider. All these things I need to add in, right? So let's do one more thing before we go on, right? So I need some paragraph text, right? Some paragraph text that I can grab. Here's my paragraph text. And this would be where my mission statement is going to come in, right? So this is my kind of a bunch of lorem text is what this would be, right? I could put in my specific text if I want, right? My paragraph here as I pull it across, right? But this is where my text would be, right? This would be my mission statement. Mission statement. Like something like, maybe my mission statement is going to be like, you know, your code lives here, right? I don't know, something weird like that, right? And or something like, you know, a place your design comes alive. I'm making this up, right? And now this is too small, right, for my paragraph stuff. So I'm going to go back in here and modify my text so it's big, right, really big. And I can color it, right? And maybe, you know what, I don't like the whole paragraph idea. I like this, but instead of a paragraph, I'm going to put in some single text that I'm going to modify afterwards, right? So here, I'm going to go back into my text. Here's my subtitle maybe. And, you know, your code lives here. And maybe, I don't know, and I'll understand what that means because that's kind of my mission statement, right? And I can take the same code and slap it into my other website here, this thing. Depending on how I want to put it in, you know, as an example, here's your code lives here. I'm not going to make it that big. Maybe make it like, again, 14. It's the subtitle, right? And again, if you see what I'm doing, I'm creating my site wireframe. As I'm creating my desktop, I'm creating my mobile to get an idea of what I want to do, what my framework can do for me, right? And which pieces of my framework I'm going to pull together so I can make my files. So I'm going to stop it here. We can continue, but you get the idea. And this is what I wanted you to do today. Get the idea of how to do wireframing, because we need to do this when we do any kind of design. And by the way, this is useful for you if you're going to do on the game side, if you're doing COMP307, and if you're doing a wireframe for your games, or you're doing a wireframe of your app that you're doing for another course or something like that, these same tools are the things that you want to use to kind of design your UI, your user interface, before you actually do any coding or before we do any actual work. Why? It's going to save you tons of time. If you do the other way around, if you just code it on the fly and try to figure things out, you will not get the same kind of result. Now, there's the other thing. Will my wireframe at the end of the day match my website 100%? And the answer is probably not. Why? Because there's certain things I can do here on my wireframe that I can't do as easily on my website. It takes more effort. Or maybe there's something better that I came up with on my website than an original wireframe. But remember, I have a plan. This is a plan for how I'm going to do stuff, right? And at least it'll get me on the right track to doing proper work. So let's end it there.